boxing philosophy is about understanding. How does Holyfield land his left hook? How does Canelo land his left hook to the body? Who owns the best jab in boxing, and why? These questions open doors. They push us to explore the different elements of the sport, the punches, the timing, the rhythm. But also there are less visible layers, glove size, contracts, psychology, and the unique environment each trainer builds. What truly makes a great trainer? Is it the strategy they design or the culture they create in the gym? Boxing philosophy is about asking sharp questions, even when there are no clear answers. Because in the search for answers, understanding grows. I think Boots Ennis is potentially a great fighter. There's a fluidity in his work that's truly impressive. In his last outing, he looked sensational. Boots brings so much to the table: a sharp jab, crisp combinations, elite footwork, reflexes, and high boxing intelligence. He's fighting this Saturday. Will his run continue? Can Boots be stopped? Can he be pushed into an uncomfortable zone? The journey of Boots Ennis represents the science of boxing, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. Paulie Malignaggi, the former two-weight boxing champion, is making a dramatic bare-knuckle comeback at age 44. He's set to face rival Tyler Goodjohn at BKB 47 in Leeds. Known for his sharp boxing IQ, Malignaggi aims to prove his technical skill still translates in the brutal, fast-paced world of bare-knuckle fighting. Netflix is deepening its involvement in boxing through live events and original content. The platform will stream Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis in November 2025 and release Matchroom: The Greatest Showman, a behind-the-scenes documentary series. Netflix also plans a Mike Tyson docu-series. Jaron Boots Ennis continues to redefine modern boxing. His movement, reflexes, and precision from both stances show elite-level mastery. Against other champions, he proved he's more than hype. He's evolution in motion. Can anyone at welterweight handle this skill? Is this the rise of a new era in boxing?
So have you been watching Jaron Boots Ennis recently? Did you see his fight against Stanionis? Now, Boots Ennis, he's really impressing me. And in watching his fight against Stanionis, apologies if there's mispronunciation, Stanionis was considered to be high competition. In other words, his opponent was seen to be on a high level and therefore was clearly coming to fight with passion and ambition. So what did I see watching the fight? I saw great movement. I saw a beautiful jab. And the jab, it came from the orthodox, but it also came from the southpaw position. And I thought the smoothness was very impressive. Also, the double jab from the southpaw position, and the lead left to the body, very nice. Now, his opponent was looking for counters. He was actively looking for punishing counters, those hard counters. And fair play to him, he did find some good counter-punching opportunities. But considering this, what did I like about Boots Ennis? Well, I think his reflexes to me, they really stood out. He's just so quick hands, but also really quick feet. Similar, no one's the same as Roy Jones, but similar to Roy Jones, where it gave me that type of reminder. And his lead hook, particularly from the southpaw stance, so the right hook, that was fast, powerful, and it produced a new punching angle. The right hook and the left uppercut, again from the southpaw stance, produced further new punching angles. And when Boots Ennis got on the inside, what I really liked is that he also made that investment to the body, and he also disguised it behind going to the head and then snapping to the body. And as we know, body shots, particularly at the lighter weights, they can crush your soul, or they can take your soul. Boots, he snaps the jab from either stance, then he measures you with the jab from either stance, and then he flicks the jab to set up punches. In a sense, he has a diversification, and I like that. Also, the head movement is great. The right hook to the head and the right hook to the body. So the right hook to the head and the right hook to the body from the southpaw position, perfectly executed, just so crisp. And the other thing I like about Boots is, similar to most good fighters or great fighters, he goes through the phases. He'll hit you with 3 combinations, one after another, again, 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 and again. So from what I can see, Boots has tremendous ability. When I see Boots box, I see boxing as an art. When I see Boots box, I see boxing as a science. And that is a beautiful thing to see. So here's just a few questions that I have. Can anyone at welterweight handle this level of skill? Because this level of skill is really high. And how far can Boots Ennis go? And is this the beginning of a new era? This is about to get very interesting.
Ben Whittaker's signing with Eddie Hearn could transform his career. With Matchroom's global reach, he gains world-class exposure and financial opportunity. But success brings pressure. He must perform, entertain, and deliver on the hype.
So Ben Whittaker signs to Eddie Hearn. What does this mean? It means bigger exposure and bigger international branding. Because Eddie Hearn, he represents not just a machine, he represents a huge machine. For example, their new deal with DAZN represents millions. I think it's 100 million, it may be even more. Because with Eddie Hearn, he brings finance and exposure to the table. Let's give an example. Look at what Eddie Hearn has done with Conor Benn. Conor is not a world champion, but he is a household name that makes serious money. Of course, it helps being Nigel Benn's son, but there was a point where Conor Benn's career was not on such a massive trajectory. So what's the point of this? The point is that Eddie Hearn can make fighters popular and profitable. Eddie Hearn can make fighters popular and profitable. And he also has the ability to get title opportunities. Eddie Hearn is popular as a promoter, and his machine, they promote big fights. He has a powerful relationship with DAZN, and that's essential. Also, think of this. When Eddie Hearn does interviews, think of this. He promotes his fighters, and he also promotes their fights. He engages in the marketing. He engages directly in the marketing. Let me give a reference. Eubank and Eddie Hearn, they're always having, back and forths. And that's a prime example. Their exchanges is marketing, because their exchanges are promoting the Conor Benn and Eubank Jr. fight even more. So in a sense, signing with Eddie Hearn opens the door to finances and fame. It opens the door to finances and fame. And let's be honest, not all promoters can open that door. And considering that Ben Whittaker is like a charismatic type personality, there is the potential, at least, that this could be a great relationship. Also, what's interesting is that Eddie Hearn, I believe, supports the Muhammad Ali Act. What is the Muhammad Ali Act? Well, it's legislation on bringing fairness to fighters. Now, the only criticism that I could find is that Matchroom has contract complexity. You might ask, what is contract complexity? Well, contract complexity is the small print of boxing, the glove size, rehydration, rematch clauses, etc. But the truth is, All promoters do contract complexity. Let's not kid ourselves. The objective of boxing is to win, and everyone is trying to gain an edge, whether it's the promoters, the managers, the trainers, the fighters, etc. So from the surface at least, Matchroom does fair business. There's another caveat here, because it's important to remember that a fighter negotiates or should negotiate a contract with their manager and lawyer. Typically, fighters at the top level or near the top level or contenders, they would have a team, and that team should have their interest at heart. I say that to say this: if you sign a bad contract, who is to blame? Is it the promoter? Is it the manager? Is it the lawyer? Because these are the people that are supposed to represent your interest. But there's no doubt that Eddie Hearn represents this massive machine. But even with Eddie Hearn behind you, you have to provide results. And the reality will be that Whittaker will not only need to win, but he will need to win well. There will be pressure. There will be pressure to develop a buzz, to build rivalries, and to satisfy the need for entertainment. But this can be Ben Whittaker's lottery ticket, as long as he has the right numbers. And of course, with situations like this, there are a variety of questions to consider. For example, will Ben Whittaker rise to the occasion under Eddie Hearn? Will he be able to rise to the occasion? And can Eddie Hearn turn Whittaker into a global superstar? Yes, he's turned others into superstars, but can he turn Whittaker into a global superstar? And does signing with Matchroom guarantee success, or does it just guarantee the opportunity? And finally, will Whittaker be able to handle the pressure that comes with the spotlight? Like I said, things are about to get interesting.
Zhilei Zhang once looked unstoppable after demolishing Joe Joyce twice, proving he had power and skill to match any heavyweight. But recent losses to Joseph Parker and Kabayel have raised serious questions about his stamina and future. Can Zhang bounce back and remind the world why he was once seen as the most dangerous southpaw in boxing?
So what happened to Zhilei Zhang? What happened? Now, I remember when he fought Joy Joyce, and he looked absolutely awesome. And I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably thinking Joe Joyce was not a high-level contender. However, he was considered a high-level contender at the time. Remember, Joe Joyce handed Daniel Dubois his first defeat with stinging left jabs. He looked really good that night. And he stopped Joseph Parker, who was a former world champion and is currently a contender. Joe Joyce was looking like the next best thing. But then came Zhilei Zhang, a real monster that could truly punch. Zhilei Zhang is a southpaw, and he's not only a great puncher, he's a really good counterpuncher. Now, in the first fight, Zhang was landing the straight left and the right hook over and over and over and over again. And when he turned the right hand into a hook lead, he was extremely dangerous. Zhang looked great. He looked really good, and he looked even better in the rematch. And truth be told, he looked good against Filip Hrgović, even though the fight was a draw. He had power, but he had the boxing intelligence to land those punches. So yes, he had power, but he had the boxing intelligence to land the punches. Against Wilder, I thought he looked fantastic with the knockout. But then came the loss to Joseph Parker. but he did knock Parker down twice in that defeat. But then came the loss to Caballero. Now, we still don't know how good or great Caballero is, but what we do know is in that fight, Caballero figured the puzzle, and he figured out the puzzle relatively quickly. So what does Zhilei Zhang do now? In watching Zhilei Zhang, there seems to be a stamina issue that really needs to be addressed. But here's an important question. Can he improve his conditioning with his massive size? But there's one thing we need to remember. Zhilei Zhang is dangerous. He's very dangerous because of his extreme power and his good counterpunching abilities. And maybe the next chapter might be very soon. And on his night, he could knock out anyone. So I guess there's some questions to consider here. Can Zhilei Zhang come back stronger after the Caballero loss? Can he come back stronger? And does he still have the power or the ability to compete with the top heavyweights? Can Zhilei Zhang fix the stamina and conditioning issues? And how does he fix those issues? And is there one more big performance left in Zhilei Zhang?
Daniel Dubois takes a huge gamble stepping in against slick counterpuncher Frank Sanchez. With a new trainer and lingering doubts after the Usyk loss, Dubois faces both technical and psychological challenges. Can his power break through Sanchez's skill, or will experience and precision expose him again?
So apparently, Frank Sanchez has been turned down again. It appears that many are aware of the dangers. So now we've had Moses Atama turn it down and Richard Torres, allegedly. It's important to realize here that Frank Sanchez is a good fighter. He's a good fighter with good speed, good counterpunching, and good technical ability. Now, why would I say this after the Caballero fight? Well, just look at the Ajagba fight and look at his full resume as opposed to looking at one fight. There may also be some context around that fight with regards to how good Caballero is, and I suspect that that at the very least, Frank Sanchez may have had some issues with his legs. Anyway, surprisingly, really surprisingly, it's been alleged that Daniel Dubois is stepping in. This is an amazing risk. I feel like this is truly rolling the dice. And all great warriors roll the dice. It's refreshing to see a fighter just wanting to fight, regardless of the politics, branding, risk, etc. But I'm a bit worried for Daniel Dubois in this one, assuming that it happens. Remember, the rematch to Usyk was a stoppage loss, but there's no, losing. Everyone's lost to Usyk, but it's the nature of how he lost to Usyk. And there's questions to ask, like how much has Dubois really recovered from that defeat? And will he even know how much he's recovered from that defeat? And did that fight leave psychological scars that still linger today? Can he trust his chin, his confidence, and his instincts? Considering all these variables, I feel like he needs to rebuild his confidence. He needs to rebuild his confidence. And I feel like there is psychological work and technical work necessary. So you got the technical work, but then you got the psychological work. And I guess, the psychology of a fighter is related to the confidence of a fighter. And this could be the difference between winning and losing, so to speak. And then we got the other variable as Tony Sims as Dubois' new trainer. I think Tony Sims is a respectable trainer. He's currently doing some, he's done really good work with Conor Benn. But even though I think he's a good trainer and he harvests a good boxing environment, and that's essential, respectively, Sims just simply has not had enough time to build an effective relationship with Daniel Dubois. And remember, Daniel Dubois, his situation is quite complex because of the relationship with the father. And that's no shade. This is just what is alleged. I feel that Sim's fighting system also is very different to what Dubois may have had previously. And therefore, Dubois will need time. He will need time to adapt, maybe a couple of training camps, etc. And just a slight diversion here, I kind of feel sorry for Don Charles, the previous trainer, as it feels that his hard work, it feels like it's been overlooked. And maybe that premise is incorrect, but it feels like working with Dubois may be difficult or complex, or maybe it's a combination of both. It's difficult and complex. But how will Dubois deal with Sanchez? Well, Sanchez, what is Sanchez? What is his identity? I think he's a good counterpuncher, and counterpunching was the key in Dubois' last fight. It was the key to him losing that fight. But with that being said, can Sanchez take the power? Can he take the power of Daniel Dubois? And people say that Dubois punches really hard. And will Tony Sims' style of training and will his boxing environment, will it uplift or will it confuse Dubois? That's a really important question. Will Dubois and Tony Sims, will they be able to build that chemistry? And will that be able to translate in a positive way in the ring? From the other side, can Sanchez turn this into a technical fight? And surely if it does develop into a technical fight, surely this would give Sanchez an edge. Or alternatively, will Dubois win with sheer aggression? Will he go in there very aggressive, and will he be able to turn it into a more aggressive, grueling fight that may favor him? I guess with this one, only time will tell. But if this fight was to happen, I think it would be potentially a really good fight because both people have a lot to gain. And I think Daniel Dubois in particular has even more to lose. He's a former world champion and he's putting his brand, his reputation on the line. Alternatively, though, if he does get a win and if the win is sensational, then you can argue that he's back on the scene. So this is going to get real interesting.
When Evander Holyfield fought Riddick Bowe in the rematch, he entered as the underdog. But this time, Evander came differently. In the first fight, he stayed in the pocket, giving Bowe many punching opportunities, and he was lighter in weight. In the rematch, Holyfield used his feet more, moving to offset Bowe. When in the pocket, he threw the short left hook, changing its trajectory to the body and head. As George Foreman stated, Evander's left hook to the body was one of the best. Holyfield also pushed Bowe back, establishing dominance. The extra weight gave him the strength to move the bigger man. There were subtle punch variations too. He used the left hook and straight right, then added to the combination with a left hook followed by a double straight right. The jabs, movement and punch variation created a new boxing dynamic. Because Bowe often bent forward, Holyfield smartly used the right uppercut and the right hand counters inside. It was a great performance that made Holyfield a two-time world champion.